I make content on both TikTok and YouTube, but the demographics of folks who view my content is very different across those two platforms. On YouTube, I get a lot more international viewers, but I also get a lot more conservative viewers. I get a lot of MAGA, or even like maybe not diehard MAGA, but Trump voters in my comments on YouTube. Mercifully, the algorithm spares me from a lot of that on TikTok. But one of the repeated kind of sentiments I get from inevitably older white men on YouTube when it comes to conversations around ICE and immigration is that they're just deporting violent gang members, right? They're just deporting people from Central and South America, brown people, and the presumption there is that they're all criminals and gang members. They perpetuate this Fox News lie where they really believe that the immigrants that are getting deported are one, either violent gang members, or two, we, the American taxpayer, are paying to keep them in hotels and to like feed them takeout and give them free healthcare, and they're just mooching off all the rest of us. We know that our undocumented immigrants are overwhelmingly working. They're paying rent. They are paying taxes, and they are doing all kinds of jobs that American citizens don't want to do. And not only that, but they pay into Social Security and they'll never be able to draw out of it. They're functionally paying for your Social Security. So who's mooching off of whom? Okay, but my point is, I get this comment all the time that basically there aren't any illegals except these brown criminals and moochers, and they should be kicked out of the country. So to be clear, initially the comments were like, oh, they're all thugs and gang members, they're violent criminals. And then I was like, really? What about the moms and their little children? What about the 16-year-old girl in Worcester, Massachusetts? What about the fact that so many of these folks that are getting swept up in ICE raids are women and children? Then they pivoted to this narrative of like, oh, they're just all mooching. Those were people that clearly were being put up in hotels and I'm having to pay for it and I'm really resentful. Just a bunch of Fox News bullshit. So I realized they're really okay with all of this happening because racism, right? It's fine as long as it's brown people, right? Because those folks, out of their racism, only have a problem with brown immigrants. They're really fine with those white pro-apartheid Afrikaners who are coming in. And I asked last week, and I haven't heard back, how do they feel about Trump trying to kick, I think it's 240,000 Ukrainian immigrants who are here legally out of this country? He's canceling their refugee status and trying to ship them back to Ukraine. Amazing how quick the folks on the right have shifted their, Russia is our opponent and we are absolutely pro-Ukraine all the time. They've gotten real quiet about that. But now we're seeing the war on immigrants is not just brown people, it's being extended to hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, white folks. And I just wonder if those folks have heard a story that broke earlier this week from Mississippi. Because we actually know for over a month that when folks who are here pursuing a legal path to citizenship have showed up at their citizenship hearings, that ICE has been waiting to arrest and deport them. Except up until now, all of those stories that I have read, those folks have been from Central and South America, or they have been Middle Eastern. Doing all of the right things. They're following all of the correct processes. And despite the fact that Republicans keep repeating in my comments about immigrants being rounded up by ICE, like if they don't want this to happen to them, they should have come in here legally. Well, those people are coming legally. They are following the legal pathway and they're still getting deported. Well, Republicans don't really care about that because those people are not white. So I wonder if they saw this story that came out of Mississippi this past week. Article is dated May 21st. It's by Nick Juden. It's in the Mississippi Free Press. ICE arrests Mississippi father at his citizenship hearing threatening deportation. Again, legal process to citizenship. He's done nothing wrong. So the Republican claim of like, if you didn't want to get arrested by ICE, you shouldn't have broken the law. He didn't break the law. He did everything legally. But then also they can't stand on their racism because that man, Kasper Eriksen, is from Denmark. And the Republican claims of like, well, they can't be in this country mooching off the rest of us. Kasper is a husband, father of 4, and has a job. He's a welding foreman. So Kasper was expecting to show up for a naturalization hearing. He was legally applying to become a naturalized citizen in the US and had been working through that process. But instead, on April 15th, he found himself with chains around his belly, hands, and ankles. And the Denmark-born man fully realized what he was experiencing was not a brief disruption from his many years in America. It was not some clerical error that could be unmade in an afternoon's discussion or even be fixed with a swift intervention of a judge. ICE whisked him off from Mississippi to Louisiana, stuffed him in the LaSalle detention center along with dozens of other detainees. He was not seen as a son or a father or a husband, but simply as an alien in the eyes of the law. ICE deposited him in a facility where he shared a cell with 100 other people. Kasper has never been charged with nor convicted of any crime. He has not been accused of being a member of MS-13 or Tren de Aragua. What led the government to rip Kasper out of the arms of his wife and 4 children, to the best of his knowledge, is simply that he did not appropriately file one piece of paperwork, Form I-751. He's spent over a decade working toward American citizenship, and if you don't know how complicated it is to become a naturalized citizen, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of documents that you have to submit, and apparently one of those did not get submitted correctly. Apparently, this document was due back in 2015, but at the time it was due, his wife suffered a stillbirth, and in dealing with the loss of their first child, it just slipped right out of their head. But the American government was still continuing for the last 10 years, moving forward with his naturalization unimpeded. They didn't seem to care. No government official in the last 10 years ever warned him that they were missing this piece of paperwork. He paid his taxes every year. He kept working through the naturalization process. And in April, he thought he was going to the last meeting for naturalization, where he was finally going to be approved to become an American citizen. Because of this one document that the government never properly informed him that he was missing. For 10 years, he found himself chained up like an animal with no notice to his family, shipped from his home to a detention center in Louisiana. He's been stuck in this facility for over a month. His wife is pregnant with their 5th child. He doesn't know what's going to happen to him, if he will get sent back to Denmark or what, but his life in the US is completely destroyed. This is so needless. This is so needless. Which one of us has not had a paperwork error before? Nothing about this merits a man being imprisoned without due process, with no notification of when he will be released, because he is missing one piece of paperwork. He has committed no crimes. Sorry, but isn't this the party of the traditional nuclear family? Here is a family of blonde, blue-eyed, white people, a married father of 4 children expecting his 5th, and the US government has ripped him away from his kids and stuffed him in a prison cell. Kasper says the detainees that he's with, some of them are teenagers, some are old men that are frail enough to be confined in a wheelchair. He said some of them are in there for all kinds of different things. Some may have an expired visa or paperwork errors like him. Some potentially are accused of very minor crimes, misdemeanors. Some, it's just a miscommunication. ICE currently has 48,000 people imprisoned in the United States. None of those people have been charged with crimes. None of them are being given due process. They don't know what's going to happen to them. Could you imagine if you filed a piece of paperwork incorrectly or missed a deadline, and masked agents showed up and whisked you away from your wife and children and stuffed you in a detention facility and said, we have no information on when or if you'll be released, but you're definitely not going to be an American citizen now. Keep in mind, this is real big business. You remember when I covered ICE Director Homan, who talked about how excited he was to privatize the things that ICE is doing so that private corporations can make lots of money. The LaSalle facility where Kasper is being held is owned by Geo Group. They are making a shit ton of money off of your tax dollars and my tax dollars, keeping tens of thousands of people like Kasper locked up indefinitely. It benefits them financially to make sure that these folks never get justice. I just wonder how all those conservatives feel. This is a white married man with children who has done nothing wrong and was on the path to naturalized citizenship. This doesn't match up with the government's stories of criminal invaders that we need to be protected from. Natalia Rocha Dixon, an immigration attorney in Louisiana, says that criminal narratives are increasingly employed to justify a crackdown on all immigrants, the majority of whom have done nothing wrong. The government is more interested in feeding into rhetoric these ugly stories about immigration. We're feeding a monster for an administration that is not really concerned about the rule of law. That's the thing about this administration, she said. They don't care. They don't care if it's legal or not. It just doesn't matter to them anymore. This is happening to tens of thousands of people around this country. Unfortunately for many Americans, the fact that it's happening mostly to brown people is not compelling. But maybe it's going to be harder for them to look away when it's a blonde-haired man from Denmark who's here legally working, applying for naturalized citizenship.